Hey, what's going on, everybody? What are you doing? Are you having a good month end? I hope so. Hope you're hustling. Hope you've got some fresh ups, some be backs, some developed in there. I hope you're making a lot of phone calls. I hope you're holding yourself accountable. I hope you just don't you stay off your phone unless it's to make a phone call. Hint, hint. I hope you're answering every e-lead with intentionality. I hope that you're building relationships everywhere you go, not super selling, just building relationships. Sell yourself first, and people start to think, yeah, I like this person. And then they have, at some point, they want to buy. Remember, it's all about relationships. It's all about that. There's many people on this video right now that get that they're building relationships, build their careers. Okay. So now that we've determined all that, let's get this thing started, man. Let's rock and roll. We're going to talk about how we really build rapport today, and we're going to get deep into that. So allow me to, if I may, start turning this baby on and let's go. Let's go. So what can you do to establish rapport? That's like the $1 million question as I check my timepiece here, my trusted timepiece. What can you do to establish rapport very quickly and hold rapport during the sales process? Come on, let's start thinking about that. What can you do? Well, maybe you pay attention to their words, their tone, their body language. How do you hold rapport? Well, you stay connected with them. You let them know that you're serving them. You're not too pushy. You're not trying to put them in a car they don't want. You're paying attention to what they say. You're great question askers and you're great listeners. I teach managers how to be great managers. And one thing that managers do that differentiates them, I'll spit that out, that differentiates them over other managers is they're what we call a level four leader. What's a level four leader? I know this is a sales class, but a level four leader is someone who develops people. That's what they do. They develop people. How do they do that? Well, they do it through a number of ways, either by mentoring, maybe training, maybe facilitating, maybe being side by side. But how they do it more than anything else is by being an activator. Now, what's an activator? See, you salespeople are going to learn how to be a great manager here today, too. An activator is someone who allows through our series of questions, triggers in the activatee, in other words, the person that they're working with, triggers that person starts to think for answers on their own. Now, listen to this. A man or woman convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Now, what in the world does that mean? Let's go back and listen to that. Think about your customers too, but I want you to, the context we're talking about as a manager, but I'm going to also show you how this manager technique works with salespeople beautifully. So, one more time, a man or woman convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Now, what in the world does that mean? That means if you're trying to force yourself onto a customer, if you're trying to get them to say yes because of your reasons, not theirs, you're you're shafted, and it's just not going to happen, right? On the other hand, if you can find out what they want and you can find out why they want it and you can find out what their pain is in their current situation, because if they have pain in their current situation, what do they want? They want out of that pain. And if you can find out what that pain is, and in a timely fashion, remember to remind them about the pain, then you will increase certainty and they will end up buying. True story. Sounds like a lot, but it's not. So what that means is if I know what they want, if I know what they want and they are convinced in their own mind that they want that, the certainty goes off the chart. If I try to convince them and I haven't built any trust and rapport, it's not going to happen. So, for an activator, a manager that's a great level four leader, remember, their responsibility is to ask great questions. For a great salesperson, what's your responsibility? Ask great questions. Hallelujah. So knowing that's the case, what also has to happen if you're going to ask great questions? You better be a great listener. Because the reality is great listeners show they care. So what do we want? We want to make sure that we ask great questions. So what's that mean? If you're a leader, you want to ask great questions of your people that you lead, that you activate. If you're a salesperson, you ask great questions of the people you lead that you activate it. See the similarities? And the first thing is ask questions and then listen. And guess what happens? If you ask questions and through your listening, you build rapport, then what's going to happen is they're going to, number three, have trust. So ask great questions, listen, and then trust. Does that make sense? Now they trust you. And then the fourth piece is direct communication. Now you can have a direct communication. They trust you. They might even ask you, Bart, what do you think we should do? If a client asks you that, they're now not a client anymore. They're your friend that's going to pay money to do business with you. So let me give it to you again because I think it's so important. If you're a manager watching this, it's important for coaching and activating too. So number one, got to ask a lot of questions. I even have a book that has a bunch of questions in it that I ask, and it triggers in my head different questions to ask. It's got like 600 questions in it. And I look at it all the time to get my brain used to asking questions. Then we're going to listen intently. Now, not listen just with our ears, we're going to listen with our whole soul, with our whole body, mind, and spirit. And what that means is they could be speaking to me through body language. I might need to hear their tone. I might need to hear their words. I think last time we talked about this, there's a science called neuro linguistic programming. I probably didn't tell you that. But neuro is the brain, linguistics is communication, and programming means bringing the two together. Tony Robbins actually got famous by studying and teaching in NLP. And NLP was the one that first came up with the distinction that people communicate through three ways: words, tone, and body language. Now, I will tell you that some studies might tell you differently, but there's different percentages that they have an impact. For example, words, according to NLP studies, are not are 7% of communication. Isn't that crazy? They're 7%. Now, how much is tone? Tone. We're going to talk a lot about tone in the series as we go on in following weeks. Tone, get this. 38%. 38%. So what that means for you and me is tone is crucial. Now think about a phone call. Think about that you want to be just a prospecting superstar and you want to be really good on the phones. Or maybe you work in a BDC and you want to get better. How important is tone? How important is pace? How important is volume? Right? It's all so important. Remember when you were young and your mama was mad at you? You were maybe playing out in the backyard, and all of a sudden you heard, Joseph! And you just knew that just because of that tone, you were in trouble. Because she never would call you Joseph, because your name was Bill. She'd never call you Joseph unless she was really mad at you. And you didn't even, you were out in the backwoods. You couldn't even see her. Now, the reason I know all this is this was my mom. Couldn't even see her, but you could hear her tone. You thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I'll act like I didn't hear her. But she knew better, right? That's how powerful tone is. But the last one is not the last one, it's the first one, and that's body language. And you all get that. If we were all in a room and I asked you, most of you would get this because you've heard this probably from day one in selling. But what that really means for you and me is, man, you got to pay attention to those words and use their words. Pay attention to their tone and pace and cadence and volume. Pay attention to the body language and mirror all of it. Because look, you might have been in the room when I taught DISC behavior assessments. And I'm not going to go over them now because we don't have enough time. But a disc behavior assessment is the different ways that people communicate in their different personalities. Okay. So the reason I felt that was so important to teach is because of the fact that if I knew how somebody communicated and what their personality type was, dude, guess how I'm gonna sell them? Strictly based on that. That's why my platform has, I think, 25 different videos on disc. I love disc because it's such a great way for me to really know how to read my customer. I gotta tell you, I love disc for that reason as much as any other reason. Is that if I'm a salesperson, dude, I want to know disc because I want to make sure that I can read a customer instantly. But there's another way too. So you become almost bulletproof if you've got both of them. And that is to pay massive attention to those words, tone, and body language. Because when you do that, here's what's going on. When you're mirroring them, and some of you know this on a kind of a surface level, but you don't know it at a deep level. When you mirror them, their brain is saying to them, hmm, there's something about this person that I trust. There's something about this person that I believe is my person to help me with a car. If you ever go in the doctor's office and you're sitting down with a doctor, I did. I had a melanoma in my back and they had to cut it out. And I remember the doctor coming in and he was a dude. And he had a ponytail, cool dude. He was a surfer. And instantly I connected with this guy. And I just trusted him instantly. He might have been terrible, but I trusted him instantly. You know what, Tim? He asked me questions and he listened. And then he gave me the information and gave me the play by play of what was going to happen in this experience. Isn't that important for a client? Wouldn't a client like to know what the steps to the sale are, what the process is in advance? Talk about being a pro. You've asked, first of all, you find out what they want, then you find out why they want it. And then in that discussion, you find out a little bit about who they are and how the two shall meet. And in those discussions, what you realize is that you are connected with them. And then you start asking them some more questions, and they start asking you questions. And then eventually there's a trust built, and you give them some information. And when you give them information after you built that rapport, they're locked into you. There's a picture of, as I've got my hands up here, there's a certainty ball going between both. And the certainty ball started on this side. But as you're building rapport, listening, asking, listening, giving them some information, you're building that trust and what's going on. There's certainty. Ball is going all the way to this side. So we've talked about some things that you can do to establish rapport. Pay attention is as important as anything else. So how do we do it? I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this here as we're about halfway through to just kind of practice with some of these words because I don't want to rush through this. But how you establish rapport, build, maintain rapport in the conversation is use of keywords, phrases, and language patterns. Now, what in the world do we mean by that? Well, let's look. Hey, Jim, here's what's going to happen. You and I will come on in, and I'm going to ask you some questions. And then once you give me some information and I know what vehicle really will work for you, I'm going to go get that vehicle and pull it up. Sound fair enough? So that locks it in. What's the client going to say? Yeah, that makes sense. It's just very, very strong. As with anything, if you use it too much, it's going to lose its impact. But periodically in intentional places, it works really good. So after that, we're going to take it. We're going to go out and look at the car. I'll show you some features on the car. And then you and I will take a drive to make sure it works for you. After that, we'll come in. I'll give you some ideas and numbers. And you can decide whether it's a vehicle that you're interested in or not. Fair enough? So again, I didn't use it every time I laid down what we were going to do. But overall, I used it. Maybe you're giving them numbers and there's an objection and you think you handle the objection and then you say, hey, Bill, here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go to my manager. I'm going to tell him what you said. and then I'll get all the information from him and I'll come back and show it to you. Is that fair enough? Use it periodically. It locks in what it's the way you say it. You're a pro. You're bringing them into it. You're allowing them to have an opinion. You're allowing them to participate in the whole process. That's what's so important. Participate in the whole process. Fair enough? So when you make a statement, you ask that at the end, it locks it in. Now, oh man, I remember obviously during COVID, we used the word pivot all the time. I hate that word, right? I also hate the word, and I'm gonna surprise you with this one. I hate the word coach in business because we're not coaches, most of us. And if you go through my coaching program, you'll know what I mean by that. So I don't like that word. I won't use the word hate because I'm a person of faith and I love, but I like that word. And another word that I tend to use once in a while is the word right. And then there's those people that use it every sentence. Hey, here's what we're going to do, right? We're gonna show you how to do a walk around, right? And then we're going to show you the 5 steps of a walk around, right? And then we're going to start at the hood, right? And then we're going to open up the hood, and you're going to ask them a couple questions, right? They say right after every word. Be careful; it'll drive people nuts. And the problem with that is they won't tell you, right? But subconsciously, they're thinking this person's annoying. Does that make sense? Let's move on to the next one. Fair enough? Yeah. Let me ask you a few questions. This is another phrase that's really powerful. Years ago, before any of you were born, we had phones that were landlines. And if I wanted to get somebody's phone number, I had to dial zero for an operator. The operator would pick up the phone and say that, operator, if we needed a number, we would tell her what number we needed. And here's how that would sound. I'm looking for, and the operator would say, how can we help? I'm looking for a phone number. What's the name of the phone number? It's Bob Jones. One moment, please. In that moment, a few seconds later, you would hear a response. The number is, and it would give you the number. The reason for that little statement before the number went out is it triggered the brain. It's fascinating, psychology is, to be ready to get the number. Because in the 60s, we did that and we would call and ask for a number of somebody, and it would come back and say 2221212. And what they found was they would repeat it, but a lot of people had to wait for it to be repeated the second time because we weren't listening the first time. And for the phone company, it cost them more money. They have to repeat it twice. But what they found was if they started off with the number is, you were ready to write it down. And in most cases, didn't have to listen to it twice. That makes sense? Okay. What's that have to do with this? Let's say you meet somebody on the lot. It's a snowy day. You greet them. Hi, welcome to Billy Bob Motors. How can I be of service? Well, I'm looking for a Bronco. Great. Glad to help you with that. Was there a specific one that you saw online? Yeah, I saw a blue one online, a brand new one. Great. Well, because of the weather, why don't you and I come inside? I'll make sure we've got all the information on that one. I can pull it up for you. Fair enough? Notice how I use fair enough. He says, yeah, sure. Now, when you bring him inside, you get him a coffee, man. Do something to serve, serve, serve. You want to always be serving. After you get him the coffee, then sit down. Maybe you have a guest sheet at your dealerships. I love guest sheets. And you pull it out and you say this, sir, by the way, what I'm going to do is, assuming I have their name, what I'm going to do is I am going to, Bob, get you some information on that truck. So let me back up a bit. Obviously, when you greet them, I'm going to go back to the greet because I want to make sure I get this right for you. You greet them and hi, welcome to Billy Bob Motors. My name is Bart, and you are? My name's Ralph. Hey, Ralph. Nice to have you here. Now, Ralph, let me ask a question because there's a couple ways to spell it. How do you spell your Ralph? Ralph. Okay, Ralph. Traditional way. Cool. Ralph, were you here to see someone in particular? No. Okay. How can I be of service today? Well, I'm looking for a Bronco. Great. Were you thinking new or used? I'd like to look for a new one. I saw one on your website. It's a blue one. Hey, well, because it's cold out here, why don't you and I go inside? I'll give you something to drink, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'll pull that vehicle out for you. Fair enough? Yeah, but I think it's right over there. That's fine. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you anyhow because I might have other options for you that could work even better. And that way we can get out of the cold. Would that be okay? Yeah, that's fine. Follow me. At that point, they're going to follow you inside. At that point, you're going to get them a coffee. And then, or if that's what they want, and then sit down with them and say, Bob, in front of me, if you have a guest sheet, I have a guest sheet. And the reason we do this is so it kind of cues me in on certain questions that might be important to you. Do you mind if I ask you a few quick questions? And what are they going to say? No, you're setting the stage for it. Or you could say, let me ask you a few quick questions. You could do it either way. Some like to do it in a little bit more, I don't know if soft is the word, but maybe a friendlier way. You mind if I ask you a few quick questions? No. Or let me ask you a few quick questions. Either way could work, but you're setting them up for what you're going to do next. That's a phrase that keeps rapport. Okay. How about on a phone call? How many times have you called somebody back? Maybe you saw them 2 days ago and you call them on the phone and you say to them, Bob, this is Bart. I just wanted to find out if you're interested in a car that car you looked at last couple of days. It's a terrible way to handle a phone call, but there is a better way. Now, this is on my learning management system, but I'm going to teach you a little bit today about follow-up calls and what's called the one thing. Okay. And look where we use that phrase. You ready? Okay. You be the customer, I'll be the salesperson. You were in 2 days ago. You looked at a blue Bronco, but you didn't buy because it wasn't enough for your trade. Fair enough? Okay, here we go. Ring, ring, yellow. Is I forgot who I'm asking for. I guess Ralph. All right, we'll stay with Ralph on this one. Is Ralph there? Yeah, it's Ralph. Hey, Ralph. This is Bart over at ABC Motors. How are you today? I'm good. How you doing, Bart? Great. Ralph, the reason I called is first of all, I just want to really say thank you so much for coming in a couple days ago. It was a pleasure hanging out with you, and I'm really sorry that we couldn't put something together, but I'm really confident we can. Now, there's other questions, but we're not going to talk about those today. That's the beginning of the call, and you're telling him or her the reason for the call. So those key phrases sound fair enough? Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? The reason for the call. And why are we doing that? Because we want to keep and build rapport all the way through the process. Guess what? We've got others as well. So here's your homework for the week. I hate that word homework. Let's call it a strategy. I want you to take these three, take a picture of these, and work on these throughout your sales process. Pay attention to how you're using them. Pay attention to words, tone, and body language. Really pay attention to the tonality. I really want you to work on that this week and these key phrases. Fair enough? You mind if I ask you a few quick questions? The reason for my call is, oh, we'll see you guys next time. Great job. Appreciate you. Appreciate you very much. We'll see you guys soon.